Welcome to another edition of Club Hawthorne Live. We're out here at our Crest Road location, and Emily, things are starting to pick up a little bit because we're just 2 weeks out from Derby. It's a little bit of a quiet afternoon right now, but things are going to get really exciting coming up very quickly.
Certainly for us. I think down in Kentucky today they had a lot of workers. I saw a lot of videos being shared on social media. So it is the time for that where you're watching the works, and I think, you know, following people that maybe have been watching these horses that sort of know how they train. Because sometimes if you don't have context, you see a horse work fast, you're like, well, they always work fast. It's not really going to indicate any forward movement, or you see a horse that works poorly. If they always work poorly, but they run off the screen, then, you know, you just want to be seeing them doing what they're naturally doing, right? Just keeping their fitness leading up to race day.
It's like this is the week of the works, and you're going to see all the video of the works and all that. Next week is the week of the baths, where everybody just takes photo after photo of every horse getting a bath after everything they do in the morning, and it gets a little insane. But I'll tell you this. You want to focus on kind of how horses are coming into the race. We talked time and again about two fills who stabled at Hawthorne, keeping in that routine and remaining at Hawthorne as long as they can. I really like that for how it's going to work for Larry Ravelli, because he's done it with the horse throughout the course of his career.
And also they have the benefit of a race at Churchill Downs as well. So it'd be a little bit more concerning if the horse had never run at Churchill Downs. You don't know how he handles the surface and all that stuff, but they kind of have that already checked. So that allows them a little bit more flexibility to kind of stick to the plan that they feel most comfortable with.
To me now, all right, your most important thing, I guess, at this point is that final work and coming out of the work well. The next step probably is the schooling process in the new paddock at Churchill Downs. And I've been down there for a couple of derbies. I've been in a paddock for a derby. The old paddock was real tight. I mean, it was one of those you felt uncomfortable with 12 horses. So with 20, it had to be insane. It's a little bit more room now. It's a little bit roomier, but still, you're talking 100,000 fans on Derby Day. I like the guys that are smart enough to bring that horse in there on Oaks Day and get the walk a day ahead of time when there's a lot of horses there. I find an importance to it. Do you find an importance to schooling in the paddock a little bit?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think the schooling in general, you know, getting horses acclimated, at least you can learn something about them, you know, certain tendencies that you can sort of prepare for, but nothing can certainly prepare them for that big day, that walkover, all the fans, the excitement. We've seen horses lose their race in the paddock. I can't remember the Bob Baffert horse, but
1,000 words, was it?
There you go. That might have been it. Got really washed out, lost the race. It might have even flipped if I'm thinking of the same horse.
And here's the reason why we felt so badly about it, because we were doing a show leading up to the Derby, and we had Florent Giroux on to talk about this horse specifically going into the Derby, and then the horse scratches in the paddock. We felt so badly for him because the horse was in with a shot that day too. Now, the other thing about the Derby too that's interesting is there was an old Illinois Derby winner by the name of Recapture the Glory. So Louis Roussel had the horse. E.T. Baird rode the horse. I remember talking to E.T. about the Derby, and he said the thing that was so weird was he had post number 5 in the Derby that day. They were going, everything was perfect in the paddock. Going through the tunnel, and all of a sudden when that first horse emerged out of the tunnel and the roar of the crowd came, he was still in the tunnel. He said his horse stood straight up. He went flying off the back. He said the horse stayed upright. He's like, but I'll tell you, it knocked the wind out of me. And that was something that was very tough too. So there's so much that still goes into it before you even get into the starting gate, which is insane.
Yeah, and there's, I mean, just a different track, a different time. You know, horses aren't used to racing at that point of the day. You know, all those little things are, you know, so unknown, such factors. And that's why, you know, we started talking about races, how much, you know, being able to have a little bit of flexibility and being able to watch the board and make adjustments. Like, I thought yesterday was a great example because we did the pre-race show. And I had mentioned a horse Pistol Box, and we didn't get to run because he was a late scratch. But at the time doing the pre-race show saying, okay, there's a lot of pace in here, it's probably going to set up for a closer. Then after those first couple races, seeing how the track was playing, we came back on for race 4, and I was like, change of plans, change of plans. It's like, we got to go somewhere else. And so being able to like be flexible with those types of things and the ideas that you had, being able to scratch them because you have so much more information in front of you, which is why you see a lot of the money move at the last times, because that's when you have the most amount of information.
Well, and here's the thing that was interesting too, looking back at Hawthorne's card yesterday, the last race on the card, it was a horse from the barn of trainer Robert Pompelli, don't know Margot. When I went on the air at about 10, 11 minutes to post, this horse was the favorite.
Yep, I remember that.
Because I even made a comment saying, I don't know why the horse is the favorite.
And then you moved on really quick.
I did, and it was one of those things because I didn't know why the horse had just run, what, 5th or 6th at the same level at 60 to 1 in that last
common
out.
race,
Yeah. And then all of a sudden the horse wins at 24 to 1 and pays $50. And even Peter Glassie in his call mentioned, he's like, the money wasn't early. But it wasn't in there late on You Don't Know Margot. But that happens. You have to watch for some of that too, because you never know who's putting the money in, or if it's the barn, connections of the barn or whatever. But when you see something kind of out of the norm early, you might have to adjust your thoughts at least a little bit.
Yeah, and try to look back. And so I was looking at that too. And part of my angle for that race was I was looking at horses that had run in the Illinois Bred Stakes races, right? Which put us on the 4. And
the Cat Royale.
I'm so bad at the names. Cat Royale, and then the 5, which was Scott Becker's horse, Galib's Honor, I want to say. But then I Don't Know Margot, her very first race, her debut, was in one of the Illinois Bred Stakes races. And then I also started looking at patterns as far as Robert Pumpel, and this is something we'll mention, but I might as well throw it out there now. He's had a couple horses this meet in their second start of the Hawthorne meet that have run huge. So there's this one that we saw yesterday, and then there was another horse that finished second, very tight second, at another like 25, 26 to 1 type shot horse.
And that barn, and we'll get to our races today for Club Hawthorne Live too, but that's a barn that's not afraid to test their horses either. They're not afraid to take some of these horses and go to Oaklawn Park, to go to Kentucky. Of course, they'll run down to Fairmount Park too. But yeah, right, Indiana, they're there too. And these are quality meets, and then all of a sudden they come here, and you're like, man, you overlook the barn because you're like, oh, okay, well, there's Scott Becker and there, Michelle Boyce and people like that, and then $50 winner later is the way things go.
They knew.
So today we kind of did a little bit of a shift for Club Hawthorne Live. Originally we were going to cover 4 races and a couple of stakes. Well, the first race at Keeneland scratched from 7 down to 4. So we decided, okay, there wasn't a whole lot really to look to in there, and I'm looking at the horse galloping back, and it was 8 to 5 on top of 3 to 2 on top of 6 to 5. So it was one of those things that
it actually ended up being a 3-horse field, and when it's all said and done.
Was there? Oh my gosh, there was another scratch.
Yeah, so good pass.
That was a good pass, and then we had a race later on in the card. What was it? Aqueduct's race, Aqueduct 2, which again on the turf. New York still has coupled entries, so because of that, there were only 5 betting interests in the race, and again, if we can't find a race that can't conceivably provide any value, we're going to look away from that. So we're 2 races we're going to cover today. Tampa, race number 3, and then Keeneland, race number 2, and then there's a couple of stakes. We're going to look at the Oaklawn Handicap, and we're going to look at the Elkhorn from Keeneland. I'll tell you, Oaklawn has a good card Saturday.
Yeah.
Keeneland always has a good card every Saturday, but that's a very good card too. So there's still some good racing. But Emily, before we jump into Tampa, race number 3 today, we did mention we're 2 weeks away from the Derby. That means you and I are going to be talking insane amounts about the Kentucky Derby over the course of the next 2 weeks. But 2 things are going to come up. First, a little bit of a shift for our Club Hawthorne Live the next 2 weeks. We're going to shift it to right before our pre-race show at Hawthorne each of the next 2 Thursdays. So next week, I think we talk just kind of as an overview. Contenders for the Oaks, contenders for the Derby, and then dive into it a little bit more the following week, you think?
Yeah, I think that's a good plan because we'll have more. You can do more of the outline. We'll have the morning line. We'll have the post. We'll have the final field, things like that. And then, next week is still just kind of like I'll get a chance to watch some works and from the information that we have, talk about maybe a couple of those horses that might draw in because that was at least for me last year, I thought that Rich Strike was a longer shot to draw in than he was to win the race. And so might have to pay a little bit of attention to those horses in case there's some shuffling.
It was so funny. Last year, I did, I think, 14 different radio and TV hits on the Derby. First 13 were before Rich Strike was even in the race. So the horse never even got a mention. Yeah. And then the 14th happened, I think, 7 minutes after the horse drew in. So that was my only comment. By the way, there was a scratch and Rich Strike drew into the race. So it's just, and it was a flukish thing, a freakish thing. At the same time, though, cool for the barn. Sonny Leone rode the horse perfectly, and everything unfolded the way it could have for that horse to win.
Yeah, somebody likes to watch races. I've gone back and watched that ride so many times I haven't memorized because it's just...
It's kind of like the Calvin Burrell ride on Mind That Bird.
Yeah, I mean just hits every pocket. The timing was right. And just rode like the race of his career. It was like Ferdinand throwback.
And think about it though, for Sonny Leone, what it's done though, it's kind of vaulted him to riding on some bigger circuits and getting a lot of mounts. So that's a great thing for him because he was a guy. I mean, he was an Ohio rider basically.
Right.
So to take that opportunity and springboard into it, congratulations to him. Eric Reed runs horses all over the place.
Another one will take some shots. Yeah, for sure.
But hey, when you take the biggest shot of all and it pays off, why not? Definitely worth looking after that. All right, race number 3 at Tampa is going to be our first race of the day for Club Hawthorne Live. These are $16,000 maidens. They're on the turf. They go a mile into 16th in here. All the also eligibles are out. So you have a field of 10 that does remain in. You're looking at the board right now. We're just kind of glancing up there. Favoritism's jumped around a little bit. Right now, the second-time starter, Zippy Zinni, the 9, is the horse that currently sits as your favorite. We talked about Mike Deeney with turf horses a few different times on Club Hawthorne Live. This is a horse that ran a pretty good race in that first start out. So deserving favorite, maybe off that last start. I think you can look a few different ways, but why don't we start with Zippy Zinni in here?
Yeah, I think this is kind of one of those things as we're talking about closers. Did close on debut to finish second, and so anytime you have a short price and you have a closer, you'd have to consider this horse is going to have to get a trip. They're going to have to get pace in front of them. And are they so much the best as the favorite that they're going to be able to overcome that?
Yeah.
And there might be some other alternatives in here. So as we talk, as you mentioned, the favoritism's jumped around a little bit, but that's always a concern to me when you have a closer at a short price. It's got to be a horse that's much the best. And I can see going with a couple different horses in here.
I could too. And you mentioned the amount of pace or lack thereof. I think pace could come from the 2 Afternoon Kisses, maybe the 3 Valiant Mistress, maybe even the 7 Royal Flair on the stretch and distance. I wanted to start with the 3 Valiant Mistress in here, Emily. This one from the barn of trainer Gerald Bennett. This is a barn that runs a ton of horses at the meet, and they win a ton of races. They thought enough of this horse on debut to claim the horse for $16,000, and then didn't run well the first start off the claim. But I thought ran a pretty good race at a big price in that last out. It wouldn't surprise me if this horse runs well at 13-1 in the 3 Valiant Mistress. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my concern with this, they've just really haven't had much of an excuse. And as far as the visuals, they're on the track right now. It's kind of a short coupled horse, and sort of the notes and the visuals have been this horse wants one turn. So going the mile and 16 today, that's a concern, especially for a horse that's been losing ground. But again, as you mentioned, should have that early speed.
Now, the 2 Horse Afternoon Kisses is a horse that I don't know if the horse can hang around late. That being said, added Lasix for the last out, had an outside draw, and they sent. It was full send from there, and the horse actually ran a decent race, hung around until the stretch, so not bad.
Yeah, their debut, we're going back to March 1st, that was a strong race, just kind of overall race quality. They were wide that day. They dueled last out, as you mentioned. And then looking at Optics plot, looks to have a little bit of a pace advantage, as we can see. It kind of has that quad 1 square, and you just couple that with the fact the horse is 16-1 and might even drift a little bit more. Certainly one that's just playable based on odds and based on running style.
All right, now going to the 7 Horse Royal Flair. This is a horse that made 2 starts at Santa Anita last year as a 2-year-old. So this is the 3-year-old debut, Lasix for the first time. This isn't a move you see a ton of, Santa Anita to Tampa Bay Downs. So that was a little bit interesting for me. But honestly, Emily, that second start of its career on November the 5th, it wasn't a bad race by any means. And again, a decent price. You're looking at 9-1 on this horse in here.
Yeah, it is definitely interesting. I mean, following that horse back in the Santa Anita races, there really wasn't much in terms of excuse. I guess the maiden claiming race, there was a next out winner as Hialeah Hottie came back to win that day. But finding some changes in here as they're gonna run on the turf. Now there has been some intention to go long on the turf, noting they were entered back at Santa Anita on December 30th. As well here at Tampa for the $16,000 tag on April 5th, just unable to draw in. So there is some intent as far as that one's concerned, but pretty cold on the board right now with that 7-2 morning line.
Surprised.
But maybe that's value. Maybe people are just, kind of overrating the 9, who's now dropped down to 9-5.
Yeah, they're watching them cheer on the horses running down the stretch for race number 2 at Gullikson. That's a really tight turf course there, it seems.
The rail's out.
The rail's as far out as basically you can go in that spot.
It's
Isn't
fairgrounds.
it looks like it. I mean, that was like turf course number 2 there.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things a little bit interesting for the race at Gullikson. But anyway, going back to Tampa in here, how about the 5 Horse? The 5 opened up as the favorite. Currently sitting at 4-1 on the board. This is Dude, Fool, and Darling. The races, none of them have been terrible by any means. A second and a couple of 4th place efforts. It looked like the horse got into the race a little bit more, though, early on in that last out.
Yeah, I mean, every single race is kind of sneaky good. And they had trouble at the start on debut, made that middle move, and then you're keying off that March 5th race. where it was a better than looked effort, actually. They were up close to the fast early pace, and the overall visuals, according to optics notes, suggest improve. And I think it's a positive sign, as we saw, kind of keying off. I don't know, Margot, kind of the same thing, you know, opened up short and has been on the drift and might end up being in at least 4-1, maybe that 5-1 range when it's all said and done, being a little bit of value on a horse that's run competitive races at this level. And it's hard to find any other horse in this field that's run competitive races at this level.
And right, and especially consistently. I mean, that's probably the horse that I would work around at the 4-1 price in here. The barn doesn't have a lot of horses, but everything seems to run fairly well. I mean, 5 of 9 starters finding the board. They're still looking for their first victory of the meet, but you have a very solid rider in the saddle there too. So I would probably work around the 5. The other one I wanted to bring up to you before we get into betting strategies, as they're just crossing over on the turf, Emily, is the 8. That's Reasonably Lovely. We talk time and again when we're covering Tampa races about horses that try Gulfstream Park and then maybe shift over to Tampa for a confidence boost. The last race wasn't bad. The horse got claimed out of that race too, but you dig back down deeper. 3 starts back in that turf start at Gulfstream, going 7.5. Speed figure-wise, career best speed figure. The race on paper, it's a 7th place effort, beating 5 lengths. Maybe that is a horse that can sneak into the mix though a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, maybe came short as a short price last out for a high percentage barn. So would have to hold their form, and maybe we can see some regression today because they are coming back relatively quick for this 3rd start in the layoff, and also stretching back out around 2 turns in the most ground that they've handled in the past. And the distance change in the surface switch is also in play for the 6, High Donna, and maybe that one's worth a mention because they had some intention to run long on the turf, noting the first couple starts that weren't overly successful, but both those races were against maiden special weight company. Now, as far as their one race when they did run for that maiden $16,000 tag, that was a winning type effort, just missed. Tight finish, you can see it's like beaten second by a nose, but recorded a B optics grade. And when we do the optics grade, it's giving like an overall performance rating, and B saying like a winning race for the level. So the fact that the horse is coming back to the level where they've been competitive in the past, maybe trying the surface, seems like they're taking some money too, bet down, kind of the opposite from that 12-1 morning line. Just got another hit, as I say, down to 9-2. So I think that, long story short, I think there's some alternatives outside of the 9. You're keying off the 5, which I like that.
Yeah, I would probably key off the 5 in this race. I think I would use the 3. I think I would probably use 6, 7, 8 along with that. So that's kind of the route that I would look. If you're looking at a race like this, kind of who are you going to work around for maybe if you were to play race number 3?
Similar approach. I mean, I think the 5 right now at 9-2 is fair enough for a win bet straight up. And then getting some of those priced in there, I think the 6 is a little bit sneaky, not as much value, but the horse seems pretty live. And then trying to get the 2, which is basically the same idea with the 3, right? We're just kind of saying, I'll go this way, you go that way, but it's basically the same type of approach. We're both looking at a long shot horse that can be forwardly placed to kind of run on the front end and stick around for a share. But those are the ones that I'm leaving in there. And, the 9, is fine. The horse can run underneath, but try to get a little bit creative with some of those horses that offer some value.
And that's kind of the thing that you have to expect here. Like you mentioned, Emily, the 9 kind of needs that perfect trip to win, at least from what we saw out of that debut race. It wouldn't surprise me by any means if this horse closed up to finish her 2nd or 3rd, but you can't play the horse to win at that price. So because of that, you're looking at some others. You're trying to find a little bit of value. And I'm with you. Speed at a price is something that can get scary because every once in a while, one of those goes and the other doesn't, and then they just keep on running. And we saw that again in the last yesterday at Hawthorne. It does happen. So see how things unfold. They're about to load into the gate here for the 3rd at Tampa. After that, we're going to shift over. We're going to cover the Oaklawn Handicap from Oaklawn Park tomorrow before going over to Keeneland for their 2nd race on the card. Only 2 live races today for you on Club Hawthorne Live. We're going to cover 2 stakes. Had to do with the fact that Keeneland scratched down to 3 for the opener today, and Aqueduct has only 5 betting interests for their 2nd race. So see how things unfold.
Do you think we should go race 2 next?
We can do race 2 from Keeneland and then just go stake. I'm fine with that too.
Let's do that because this race race 2 is 13 minutes, and there's I feel like there's a lot of storylines in there.
Here's where we get really lucky today. All right. We had the A-team at Hawthorne last Sunday, and Nate leads up the A-team, and Nate's on the board today for this show. So again, he can adjust on the fly. He can work very quickly. So Nate gave us the thumbs up to say we can go from Tampa to Keeneland, and then we can cover the 2 stakes. So it's one of those things where our TV crew's awesome. All of them are awesome. But having Nate right here to cover things very nicely handled. So, yeah, so we're going to go to race number 2 at Keeneland, and then we'll go to our 2 stakes. But, Emily, one more to load in here, and we'll see how things unfold for the 3rd at Tampa. We're expecting the 2 and 3 to show speed. Let's see if that's the case. And a little bit of activity out of the favorite, right?
Yeah, 9 acted up in the gate. And then somebody at 8 just got
8 completely missed the start.
And the 9 took contact in that as well.
So here's where it gets tough, because it's that tight turn over to the main course. You have to get that position, especially on the inside here. It looks like both the 2 and the 3 got away in pretty good order there. And the 6, Haidana, another one that you mentioned.
Yeah, the one that was stretching out from the sprints, getting caught a little bit wide, and they're trying to rate those front runner long shots out there right now. So we'll see how effective that turns out in the end.
Yeah,
but the 2 making the lead and the inside, they're trying to rate the 3 back, where the 6 is still kind of hooked wide. The 4's getting a good trip, one of the long shots down inside, and then the 5, our key horse, sitting right behind that.
Yeah, and I'll take that 23 seconds for the opening quarter. So those 3, it's going to be very hard for any of them to keep running if they're going to keep duking it out on the front end. 4 and 5 are getting the perfect trip right now. Both of them just kind of sitting behind. I think the 2's probably done. I think the race is over for that one, and it comes down to those other 2 there. But yeah, just going too fast too early. 47 and change to the half here, Emily.
Yeah, and especially when they're trying to like rate the horse as well, because that takes away so much extra energy as well when you've got something kind of cranking on your mouth. But the 6 has kind of prevailed of the duel. The 9 is raced after that poor start and acting up in the gate, raced a little bit closer to the pace, but they're losing ground. That horse is finishing off the board.
I mean, the 4 and the 5 right now are the 2 horses that we talked about here, and these 2 are running on. The 4 is just taking over the lead with the 5 right in behind. So see what how things unfold. I'm going to be a little surprised if the 4 runs on. I mean, it is first Lasix here, so maybe. They're all kind of staggering a little bit here in the lane, though.
Yeah, we'll see. It looks like the 8, after the poor start's getting that close on the outside. I think the 8's the big threat.
And it might have been the benefit of the poor start. All the 5's battling on gamely here.
Yeah, the 5 ran a good race. 4 as well. But right idea as far as the favorite. I mean, I know the gate and the start wasn't great, but I mean,
no excuse.
Even in that spot, it's a short price closer off that first start, finding some value in there. You mentioned the 8, and that horse ran. That was the horse that was like a little bit cold on the board, right?
Yeah. I mean, one turf start was a good start for it, and comes back for the victory. 8-5-4 in there, and that was the thing. All right. A bad break in that instance isn't a terrible thing when the 3 long shots go out there and just beat each other up on the front end. And they went really quickly up front, 112 and 4 for 3/4. You can't expect them to go on there. No excuses for the 9 at all, zippy zinny. But
well, the start was
broken word at the start. Yes, but I mean the 8 even had more of an excuse. That was a really good race out of the 8. That's going to be a nice return there for anybody that had that. But that was a pretty good return there for race number 3 at Tampa. We'll get prices once they come up for you in that spot. They're cheering on the opener there at Aqueduct behind us. But we're going to take a look at race number 2 at Keeneland, Emily. $50,000 maidens. They go a mile into 16th in this spot. We're going to scratch the 7. That's Kansas Comet. Right now, the favorite on the board is the 10, Patrolman. Comes from the barn of Brad Cox. Everything Brad Cox sends out is going to take some action here. This is a horse that's been away since racing at Oaklawn Park. It's a little interesting to me. There's still races at Oaklawn Park. They're still running, yet this horse shows up at Keeneland.
Shows up here for a tag for the first time, off that break. And this horse has been in good hands. Now, what this doesn't show you on paper was actually this horse started out with Bob Baffert.
Yeah.
And I was watching this horse work out in Southern California. And to me, visually, this horse had conformation issues, isn't the most efficient mover. And you can kind of see that based on where this horse has been running. And now the fact that they're going to run in for the tag and drop.
Right, another change of barns too, right.
Yeah, can this horse win? Sure, but I've been pretty much against this horse right from the start. He hasn't taken much money for those barns. Seems like they're going to kind of go all in as far as Brad Cox training and the class drop, but I still think this horse has some overall questions. And not necessarily a horse that's really going to move up. It's just necessarily are those changes going to put this horse in the right place? And at a short price, I'm willing to look elsewhere.
And here's the thing. I mean, they have tried everything. I mean, it's the 3rd barn for the horse. They went out there. They put the blinkers on in that last out. I mean, you can go so many other different ways. Let's look to the 3. That's Presider in this spot. This is a horse that raced at Keeneland back in the fall last year and didn't run great, but that was a 2-year-old facing some pretty tough company. Cyclone Mischief, the winner of that race. 2 starts at Fairgrounds this year. All right, added Lasix 2-back. Has run okay 2-back. The last out wasn't great by any means, and that was with putting the blinks on. But the race 2-back, I think, at least puts this horse in the mix. And right now, you're looking at the board, and you're looking at 5-1 on Presider.
Yeah, it wasn't the most ideal ride last out. It was in traffic, was wide. It was kind of just a mismatched ride. So I think there's positives that way. The class drop is right. And then we're actually familiar with one of the horses that comes back from that March 4th race, or January 21st race, I should say. Oh, NASA.
Yeah.
That's one that Rebelli horse that we know. So I think that they could be in the right spot in here. I kind of prefer the drop on a horse like that more than the 10, where it seems a little bit more desperation. Where as far as Presider, I think the move is like, this horse has run well. He has the race back on September 16th. That race that's on January 21st, both those speed figures stand out in this field. They're as fast as the race that Patrolman ran on January 7th. I mean, if you're basically looking at those 2 horses as the same, math takes over. Yep. You play the 3 over the 10 all day long.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I wanted to get a look at the 5 in the post rate and was able to catch my eye on that, and the 6 for 2 reasons. Both take the front wraps off, so that's important. So the 5, My Spirit, and the 6, Lazarus. And My Spirit adds the blinkers today as well. It was an inside draw on the grass in that last out. It says inside fade. I mean, maybe gave way a little bit late going 7.5 in there, but again, you're coming out of a race in the Gulfstream Championship meet on the turf over to Keeneland in for a tag here. So looking at 11-1, I could make a case for My Spirit in here.
I can as well. A horse we maybe haven't seen the best of yet. Going back to that March 12th race, there was one next out, maiden special weight winner at Gulfstream Park from that race. There was another horse that ran yesterday on the turf that didn't really do much, but another horse that did finish 4th, coming back at Gulfstream Park, but improved speed figure. So that race overall has been a little bit on the productive side to suggest that horse has to move forward as well.
And I'm surprised. You see 12-1 on that horse, yet the 6, Lazarus, is only sitting at 6-1. And I kind of put these horses as pretty much equals, too. Lazarus got away kind of slowly in its debut, was dead last. I mean, I thought it actually made a little bit of a middle move. I mean, it never got closer than 8th, but close within 4 lengths of the leaders when they bunched up before giving way in the lane. But again, you take the front wraps off, but this was a horse that they kind of threw everything to in the debut. Lasix, blinkers, front wraps. The question is, does that mean there was juice training all the way up to that debut, and now you're trying to figure it out? To me, I don't know if 6-7-1 on Lazarus is necessarily something that I'd look to compared to the 11-1 on the 5, My Spirit.
You know, I think it might be a positive sign actually for that 6 that they're taking money in here, because there's a case to be made that you just can give that debut race a complete excuse.
Yeah.
Broke at the rail, broke slow, and then the race shape was super slow. They were very slow early, very slow middle fraction. So the horse just never had a chance to run that day. So projecting improvement in the second start seems like the right spot. Taking money and starting to drift. So I think that that's a positive.
50 to the half in that debut. 114 and change for 3/4. You're right. They were walking.
Yeah, I mean, that horse had no chance
slow.
to run.
No, you can't make up any ground in that. If you do, then you're a super horse. So can't happen. So yeah, I can see that there. And you look at the horse on the track right now, and actually the horse looks pretty good, warming up in preparation for the race. How about the 9? That's Rush Center in here. This one's 7-1 also. Very consistent. Both races I thought were okay. Both races were at Fairgrounds. They weren't bad by any means. You go over to the training center in Kentucky and worked okay over the dirt there. Most recently, a nice half-mile drill. I'm actually surprised this horse isn't taking a little bit more action. I was thinking 9-2, 5-1 on this horse.
Yeah, maybe that's a little bit of a concern. We're seeing some of the odds shift around a little bit. But this is a horse that's like the opposite of the 6, where they were off the pace in both those sprints. So again, we have the distance change. Off the pace in those sprints, but had pace to close into. And that was also a barn that was doing pretty well, and the horse is a long shot and is actually a big step up in class today. Just looking at the optics figure range, the race par was much lower in those races. So even though they're going to run for a tag today, it's a step up in class.
All right, the 2 I think just flipped and lost his rider.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, that wasn't one. That wasn't one.
No, we weren't going to talk about that, but it was interesting because you look and just out of the corner of your eye, you have the 10 kind of galloping by, and the 2 is standing straight up with the jock flying off the back of the horse. So, and they're looking around. So I guess here's the thing that we're going to wait to see as we're 2 minutes to post. Is there going to be a scratch in here of the 2? and how it affects everything else going up to the start of the race. But there's a 9 on your screen right there. And again, doesn't look too bad warming up. The question here now, you got to find out, is there a horse running loose on the racetrack? What's going on? Younger horses, and it is. It's hard. So I guess we kind of wait to see if there's going to be a scratch on the 2.
Well, while we're waiting, there is a horse that we haven't mentioned yet that I think could be flying under the radar in here. And that's the number 4, Apollo Rising. His horse is going to come back of a 177-day layoff, going back to their debut at Churchill Downs. And again, it was a maiden $30,000 race, but the race par similar to today, ran a competitive race, broke slow, had a little bit of pace to close into, but then their second start ran at Keeneland, so at least shows some intent to be here at Keeneland. Hard to take much from that race. They were up close to a very fast pace before losing ground. There's the horse right there on the track. Then the layoff that followed. Now, as far as the works coming back, this to me looks like a horse that has some intent because it's a steady series of works, been progressive as far as the moves, going back to the fairgrounds on March 3rd, that 3 furlong move, 2 half-mile moves, then all that stamina, has a bullet 2 back on April 5th. Seems like this horse could be sitting on a top effort. And again, one that's kind of sneaking under the radar for the connections and off those running lines, especially when you're running against like the Brad Cox and things like that, where they're getting overlooked. So another one that I think could be pretty live in this spot.
Well, and you have to have some money if you want to claim a horse for 40. I mean, it's not like you're going out there claiming a horse for 15. You're claiming the horse for 40, stepping up for 50 here. So that's quite the investment for anybody. I mean, you're buying a cart, and you're doing it with a racehorse. So you have to think that you have a decent chance to run well in there. Let's touch on the 1 Magnificus, only for the fact that the horse has taken some action, currently sitting at 9-5 on the board. 7 starts on its career, finally dropped in for the tag in that last out. I think probably could have broken its maiden a few different times, but again, this is another one of those where the running style may work against you a little bit because the horse is going to settle back and close late. We know the inside's been pretty good at Keeneland, but still, it's usually inside and front. And running style here, it may take the perfect trip to win.
Yeah, and not only does the horse run from off the pace, but break slow every time. So when you have the rail draw and you break slow, like, last out they were able to show maybe a little bit more tactical speed, but kind of looked like they were trying to get the horse into the race. Also at that time at Oaklawn Park, Moquette sending out live runners, was running for Louisella, who I think owns Oaklawn Park, so probably had some intention to run during that meet. Shows up here, started off their career at Oaklawn Park. So it seems maybe at this point they're going, okay, well, maybe it's Oaklawn Park. Let's try Keeneland, but it's too much experimentation for a horse that has gait issues and is going to come running late as currently your third choice in the wagering.
All right, the 8 horse at 21-1, just as we're waiting to see if they're going to load in the gate here at Keeneland. I'm not sure if they decided, is Barrel House. The thing that intrigued me a little bit about Barrel House was the nature of the announcement that the horse has been gelded since its last start. So first time running as a gelding. For some horses, that completely wakes things up and they turn things around. The first 3 starts weren't great. All right, they did scratch the 2 in their Desert Highway, as they should have.
Yeah, good eye by you, man.
It was one of those things that I'll tell you, it was crazy. The horse standing straight up in the air looked like a black stallion posing for a poster. But Barrel House here, you debut at Keeneland last fall. 2 races at Turfway Park. Then all of a sudden it's Mahoning Valley. And the horse woke up. I mean, it was a move from Turfway Park to Mahoning Valley.
Yeah.
You're coming back to Keeneland for 50. But again, you're gelded coming into the start 21-1. I was actually expecting to see the horse a little bit longer of a price. It wouldn't shock me. Sometimes that does wake up some horses in here, Emily. I don't think you're giving the horse any consideration at all, are you?
I mean,
you can make a reason for almost every horse to win a race.
I think there's others in here that I like more. I mean, just a horse that, even though the horse moved up as far as finishing position, was a little bit more competitive last out at Mahoning Valley, didn't really move forward speed figure-wise. There's other horses in here. I would say that probably their fastest race to date was back at Turfway Park on December 16th. And even that race is maybe like 10, 12, 15 points short of what it's going to need to win this type of race, and compared to some of the others that we've mentioned. So it would have to sit on a complete new top in here. I guess stranger things have happened, but again, I think there's other horses in here that offer more value, even though the 8 is a bigger number. I think sometimes that gets confusing, but
what about the outside horse? Only because I glanced up and saw 47-1, and I don't know if Boko should be 47-1 in here. The last few starts haven't been bad. They've been in Kentucky at Turfway Park. But the horse seems to be an improving racehorse in the last two, since the addition of blinkers, much better races. I'm just saying at 47-1, maybe this is a horse that could sneak in underneath.
I think so too. Yeah. I mean, I think being a contender is a little bit of a ceiling, but you're right. I mean, as far as a horse that has form, that has consistency, that has the foundation around 2 turns, isn't one that necessarily is a deep closer or as early speed. So just might be one of those kind of plotty mid-pack types that gets themselves a share.
Yeah, so kind of looking at how things are unfolding on the board right now, your current favorite is the 10 Patrolman, who we talked about, who we both said, hey, let's try to defeat this horse. Let's see if we can go out there and just try to catch a little bit of a price. I'm not sure where I would go. I guess I would probably go to Presider, the 3 here, but that one's down to 3-1. So again, you just kind of have to look, see who you can hook up with underneath. All right, the 9 at 6-1 isn't a bad price. I think I'm probably throwing the 11 in there underneath. Maybe I would be taking the 11, putting that horse in second or third, and then trying to find a way to work around there and just cheer for chaos in this race. How about you, Emily?
Yeah, I mean, I think those horses that we mentioned kind of early on, the 4 coming back off the layoff, the 5, My Spirit, is now drifted up to a big 16-1.
That's surprising.
Yeah. So that horse stays on the radar. And then the 6, who's continually taking money. They have not let that horse move from like 6-7-1. So somebody keeps feeding the machine on that horse. So it seems like, again, pretty live. But those are the 3 for me that are keying around, and that 11 getting into the mix for those underneath spots.
Right. When you get the big pools at Keeneland, it takes a lot of money for a odd shift a little bit later on. So kind of see how things unfold in here. Tell you what's interesting, I wonder if my mic's just going on and off there. I wonder if it's dying on me, if it doesn't like me, I don't even know. But we'll kind of see how things unfold. I'm guessing my mic is just saying, you know what, I don't like you.
Is that what
Maybe.
the sound is? Okay.
Yeah, we'll see. Better, you know what, maybe I gave Nate too much credit for being on the A team. But I'm looking there. It doesn't light up or anything anymore. It just kind of says, you know what we can do, Emily? All right, let's see if yours lights up.
Mine does.
See, yours lights up. Mine doesn't. See, no, oh, cool. So watch, just like a Christmas light here. See, it lights up and goes off. So, here's where we're going to pass the blame. We're going to blame Dakota for this because he's supposed to be the one that charges the mics, Emily. But they're going into the first turn now, so give us a little play-by-play here for the second.
Okay, I'll bring the microphone back to myself. We've got the 4 press on the lead with the 9 pressing, and the 11 is 3 wide, pushing that pace. The 1 is down inside, kind of sitting a pocket trip. 5 is mid-pack, on hold. Hard to tell. The 10 has been able to save ground. I missed what happened at the start, so tough to know from there. But 11 is still wide. The 6 is also wide in that stalking trip. 8 looks like they have some run from off the pace, but it's still in the lead. We've got the 4 pressed by the 9. The 11 is starting to lose ground. After, kind of a weird trip for that horse, that they parked that horse wide up close to the pace. But other than that, there hasn't been much change in order. They're starting to run, try to get some run now. The 10's doing their best to progress as far as position. 6 is still sitting mid-pack, 5 on the rail. The 4 is on the lead. The 9's under a ride. The 4 looks like they're going pretty good right now, which is a good spot for me, to be perfectly honest. I'm calling for the wire. The 8's still
on the 10 well wide the whole way.
Yeah, the 10 has been, like I said, now the 9, as soon as I say that, the 9 goes to take the lead from the 4 as they're coming into the stretch. The 1 is one of those kind of grinding type horses. They're going to try to cut away. The 4's fighting back on the inside.
What's going on with the 9? Was that a saddle slip? Was that a jump?
I don't know, but they're going to battle here. The 4 on the inside, the 9 on the outside. The 9 battles back. The 4 holds for second, with the 1 finishing third.
Right. All right, so Nate, keep this up, Nate, if you can, because he is the 18. But I want to go back and see the stretch run of here, because the 9 loses action. You don't know if it's jumping of a shadow. You don't know if it's a saddle slip late. Whatever it is going on, gives up the lead, Emily, and then all of a sudden it fights back here. But let's see. So watch the 9 here, just outside of the 4. Oh, he comes over on the 4. They're going to look at this. They have to look at this, don't you think?
Well, I think it actually happens after this, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right here.
Yeah, they kind of shift out of those tracks and then comes back in. Maybe just lost a little bit of focus. Might be a horse that needs blinkers, but at the end of the day, they were able to win the race.
So that's a short stretch race, but it wasn't the starting gate or anything. Here, let's see. So, yeah, you're right. Look at that. I mean, just kind of loses its action a little bit there.
Yeah.
And then regains it and keeps after it. And James Graham's very good at finishing on horses. We've seen it with confidence games.
Yeah, that was a very strong ride that was needed on that horse, because he corrected, like, he's done the simulator. They might, yeah. I wouldn't make any change at all. I think it's pretty fair and square, but
I'm with you because I'm always a believer on as is, unless there's a big nasty incident. But I can tell you this, like in Illinois, the stewards, they give them a few jumps out of the gate because everybody has to kind of correct themselves out of the gate. So unless it's a direct left turn or a direct right turn, you usually don't do anything coming out of the gate. In the stretch, you never know. I really want to see if there's a claim of foul here. Who rode the 4? Bejarano rode the 4. So if he claims foul, or what's the 4? The 4 was the horse that was claimed for 40 that we talked about too.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's intent with that horse. So you could have an objection, you could have an inquiry, you could have nothing.
We got both. We got an inquiry and an objection.
So let's see here. Let's see at the top of the lane. They have to be looking at the top of the lane. All right, so that's too late, right? Yeah. They need to back it up and look at the top. And then he comes in again.
And bumps to the 4. But I think what happens is after the bump though, the 4 takes the lead, right?
Yeah,
and
so right there,
and then the 9 comes back.
I think that's more that they're going to look to it is what happened there at the top of the lane, and I'm sure Nate's keeping right with the Keeneland signal while he follows this, and it's cool to see kind of the side by side, the pan and the head on there. But kind of comes back a couple of times. I would do nothing with the second one. If anything, I think they do it with the first one if they make a move.
Yeah. Again, I mean, I think that there's something there, but that's one of those things where if you're going to do anything, you do a fine or you give the rider. And this is somebody who is like
all right, here's
invested in the board.
So here's my prediction.
I'm saying leave it.
I'm with you. I would leave it.
Yeah.
I think the 4 is going to be put up.
Okay.
And here's
I'm okay with that.
And here's the reason why. I think what they're
in the long run, I'm not okay with it.
I think what they're going to say is, okay, you came in and got him at the top of the stretch, and then you could have corrected yourself, but you got him again. So, and I'm curious to see. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Here's what I like too, is. I don't like the way that left.
No, I was gonna say, if you didn't have the 4 today, then you might not want him next time.
The horse looks lame in the left hind there.
Oh, well, maybe that goes into consideration too, that you're like, look, man, now you damaged my horse.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's one of the things. But all right, so I think in Kentucky, I do like that
horse is really off.
Yeah, that horse needs to go back to the barn, and then they just figure things out. All right, so in Kentucky, they show an inquiry and an objection. Usually what we see in Illinois, it's one or the other. They kind of wait for the horses to gallop out in there, and then after they gallop out, then they thanks. Oh, that was so nice of you. She handed me off her mic. We're just going to hold it here. So here's the thing. So after they gallop out, then they wait and see if you get an all clear from the outriders or not, and then they make the determination on if the sign's going to go up. And that's only if there wasn't some egregious infraction in this spot. So, Emily, I think the 4 is going to get put up.
Yeah, I think you make a good case, and this is what you do for a living now. So I think it's good to kind of hear the logic that goes in there. And I'm more of one that I think that's a fair case. And if we are sitting in the steward's room, I would be persuaded where. I think all things considered, I think that it probably didn't alter the change of the outcome, but I think that either way.
So, and here's the thing, and I've served as a steward numerous times, so there's procedures that you definitely go through. So it's initially your initial thoughts on the race as stewards, and if you want to go out there and review the race on your own and call for an inquiry. Second, if there's an objection, it's automatic. You have to talk to whoever made the claim, be it the because it can be owner, trainer, or rider that makes the claim. And then you talk to them, and then you talk to the rider of the other horse for the infraction. Then after that, you go back and you review it. And basically what happens, at least in our steward stand in Chicago, everybody's watching the same thing for the review without giving any input on their own. Just watching the infraction over and over and over. And then it comes down to a vote. So, and there's times it could be unanimous one way, unanimous the other, or it's a 2-1 vote one way or the other, and you can have some discussion at that point. So I'll be curious here. I think this is going to be one of those kind of 2-1 votes going one way over the other.
Decision. Yeah.
And in the split decision, I think your 4 is going to get put up. And you take into account, like you said, I mean, we did not like what we saw on the 4 horse walking around making circles there. I don't know if they're going to put the horse back up again either. I wouldn't look at the horse.
Yeah, that horse looked kind of injured, especially they were starting to get their right hind shifting their weight, which kind of shows that they maybe,
And if you're the rider and you notice that, hey, if you're making your case for these guys, you're saying, hey, this guy knocked me off. I mean, he could. Bejarano could say, this horse hit me so hard that it completely knocked me off to the point that my horse is lame. And whether on the track you see that it's a little brush or something, you have to make that case. I mean, you're pleading basically, and I'm guessing he's probably the one who claimed foul as it is, but you're pleading for your owners, you're pleading for your connections, and just trying to make your case. And it's money in your pocket, too, if you get put up. Person in this race is $54,000, and that was a Kentucky bred, so that's a big pot that this 4-horse has. And honestly, the way we saw the horse is probably going to be going on the shelf for a little bit after this, too.
Yeah.
So
retired.
All right, so kind of the procedure here. I mean, we're just watching the 9 look around. I'm sure they're watching on repeat up in the steward stand. So basically at the racetrack, and you see it at almost every track, when you have an infraction, they go up there, they have to show the public. So sometimes, for us, even if there's an incident where a horse happens to go down in a race, we still will show it to the public at least once. You don't ever want to show a horse getting injured by any means, and you don't ever want to see that. A lot of times the horses pop right back up and they're fine too. But you need it's only fair to the public to be able to see the incident as well. So we got to see it a few times there. To me, when you have something like this, the longer they look at it, means somebody's wanting to make a case one way or the other.
Okay.
So we'll see kind of how things unfold. But as you notice, they're only showing the 9-horse right now. I wonder if they took the 4 back, or if the 4 is even getting a ride back on the horse ambulance.
Yeah, they had to. I mean, that horse just needed something.
I feel badly. That's Grant Forrester right there in the hat. Grant always wears a hat like that.
Yeah, so, that's right.
Very good trainer. Very good trainer. Good guy. I dealt with him way back in the day when he was at Arlington Park, and really good with turf horses too.
Mm-hmm.
But
turf sprinters.
Yeah. So it's one of those things. And then Paul McGee. I mean, I've known Paul for 20 plus years, but I know his brother Marty, who longtime correspondent for the Racing Forum. How about Marty? He leaves the Racing Forum. He's going to be a jock agent. It took him 30 years to determine he wanted to be a jock agent.
Yeah, I think it's more popular now and again to make career changes and make moves. And why not? I mean, use your knowledge to go in a different direction. I mean, why not? If
you get the right guy, you can make a lot of money. They're taking the saddle off, which makes me think the 4 is the winner.
Yep, okay, you're right. Good call.
So it goes 4-9-1. Can I ask if you had any money on it?
I did, yeah.
Okay, good. I'm happy for you.
Yeah, got a little bit in there.
I would have probably voted that way.
Yeah.
If I were in the steward stand, I would have said we're putting the 4 up. Only for everything that combines with it, not knowing what either rider said. I'm sure the case from Bejarano was he knocked me off stride so badly that my horse is injured.
Yeah, and I think the case that you made as far as there being 2 points of contact, right. I thought that was fair, and especially the way that 4-horse looked afterwards. Yeah. I mean, as you can tell, they're not even doing a photo. That horse is back in the barn. I hope that they're okay, and that the horse is okay, because it was obviously worse than it looked just off that replay.
Yeah, very good vets there in Kentucky, so they're definitely going to make the right call for the horse, but. Emily makes a little bit of money. There you go, $12.78 for the win. The exacta for $139. We were right. Toss that favorite out again, and it definitely paid off. The 10 raced up in there, and then was kind of out of it the rest of the way. So
yeah, it's crazy having those little nuggets of information of just going back and being like, oh, I watched this horse work 2 years ago, and had some questions back then. So here's the replay.
Yeah, so there's the infraction. They show it to everybody again, and the announcer comes on, and basically the stewards are relaying to the announcer, here's the reason why we made the disqualification. Now you get to go describe it to the fans. Some locations, and Indiana actually does a really good job of it. A lot of times their stewards will go on and say, here's the reason why. And I kind of like that too.
Yeah, and I mean, I think as you mentioned and kind of made the case as far as okay, here was reason 1, and then if that would have been it, no problem, whatever. 9 was probably best. We could easily leave it, but at least you're giving your reason, and from a player standpoint, maintaining consistent on that, right?
You have to.
So if you're doing that, I think that's really what the public wants as well, is just that level of consistency to say, here's my rhyme, here's my reason, and we're doing it this way. And they took long enough and went through it, and You sold me on the logic, and I can be a tough sell. So.
There you go. 5-1 on top of 7-1 on top of 4-1 in there for the race at Keeneland, race number 2. All right, that's it for our live races today, and we packed a whole lot into 2 live races. That race and that inquiry took so long, Emily. They're walking to the gate for the next at Tampa. All right, now there's 2 stakes that we want to look at, and here's the cool thing about just being on air live, dealing with things on the fly. My mic turned into a Christmas light and decided it didn't want to work anymore. So there's a whole lot of behind-the-scenes shifting that goes on. Fortunately, you have your computer with you, so it's plug it into the USB. Go onto it, hold on to it. No, it's just like our old handheld mics, just they're a little bit smaller here. But the first of the races we're going to look at for the Saturday Stakes is race number 10 from Oaklawn Park tomorrow. This is the Oaklawn Handicap. It's 1 1/8 miles. It's a field of 7 in here. We talked about the Essex Handicap a few weeks ago because I really liked the Last Samurai, and the horse ran well. But then you look on paper for this race, I would have thought initially look in the field, okay, Last Samurai is the favorite and kind of go from there. But then all of a sudden you see Charge It in this race, and Charge It's 8-5. Numbers are huge over the course of those last 3 starts. I still like Last Samurai a little bit more, but let's start with those 2 horses. Who would you give preference to between Last Samurai and Charge It? Or neither?
C. None of the above. No, but going back a little bit further, I'll talk about both these horses. But, I mean, this race as a whole, and part of that reason is, even though it's a 7-horse field, this is about as good of a graded stakes quality field because every horse in here is a legitimate racehorse. Okay, so we'll start with those horses. As far as Charge It, my real big knock on this horse is he has run those fast numbers, but has done so against somewhat of a listed stakes company or at the grade 3 level, not quite at the level of competition or experience as these other proven horses. Does have to kind of step up in this graded stakes spot, in for the 9 furlong distance, making their first start at Oaklawn Park. And then also, last out, they were a heavy favorite that day.
Right.
I thought the plot had the horse a little bit vulnerable, so I thought there was a chance that the horse could be beat at a short price, and he was. But off that race, they're like, we'll add the blinkers. To me, it's like there's a lot of experimentation on a horse that has, in my opinion, maybe has had a lot of hype behind him because he's done some good things at times, but at other times really hasn't stepped up in certain spots where he sort of needed to show his class. So could he win? But the fact he's going to be a short price in here is a little bit vulnerable off those factors. Now, as far as number 2, Last Samurai, another horse. He's obviously capable. He has the benefit of races here at Oaklawn Park. The 9 furlongs, maybe that's not his ideal, but I think my biggest sort of knock of anything outside of the projected shorter price is maybe he's peaked in his form cycle because he's run those 2 big races. As we talked about, the Pegasus Invitational has been a key race. It's been very productive. The horse is coming back. We'll talk about a few others that are running in this race. They got a favorable trip after a slow start to win the Razorback, and then got another good trip by Torres in the Essex Stakes, and that was a pretty taxing effort. As you mentioned, going into that race, he had the outside post that day, had to overcome the outside post in order to get that win, had to work super hard. So I think a horse that might be just a little bit peaked in his form cycle, and now he's going to have to run at a distance that might not be his ideal. So both those horses, to me, have slight knocks, and anytime you have knocks at a short price, forces you to go elsewhere.
Adding blinkers in $1 million race for the first time, I'll tell you. I mean, it's Todd Pletcher. He knows what he's doing. I'm never going to question his motives there, but it's enough for me to stay away at a short price. Not saying the horse can't win, but at that price, I'm with you. I would look elsewhere. A couple others I think that you can look to and definitely give consideration are the 3 Stiletto Boy and the 4 Proxy. We'll probably cover everybody in this race, Emily. But Stiletto Boy, I have no concerns about the distance for this horse. This is a horse that can handle this distance, has run well at the distance. Proxy kind of the same way, 6 of 7 on the board, going the 1 1/8. So when you're starting to get outside of the favorites, these are 2 horses proven to go the route of ground. I could see both these horses being in the mix at a little bit better price.
They're legitimate horses. I mean, they're both coming out of grade 1 races. And we can key off the Santa Anita Handicap and Big Cap that day because it was a blanket finish at the wire. The top 3 finishers are there. And in my opinion, I thought Proxy ran the best race of that group, had to settle for second. But again, there really wasn't much splitting them, keeping in mind it was a blanket finish. There was 3 horses across the track. A very good good race from him that day. Proxy to me seems like a horse that has so much more upside. He has those back numbers that are some of the strongest in the field. If this horse is not favored, he's value just from that alone.
And he might be the third choice just because those other two are going to take so much money. If you get 4-1, that's a great price on Proxy.
I agree.
All right, the 6 Classic Causeway is intriguing for the fact that he's kind of an all-or-nothing racehorse. He's a sellout to make the front here. This is a field where he could make the front and actually kind of cruise along for the while. And he hung in there very gamely in the Essex in that last out. It might even be just as easy again here. He might be able to slow it down, get the opening quarter in 24 and change.
Yeah, not only that, having that pace advantage, but now he has the fitness on his side. He's second off the layoff, has the race around the course, has been able to hold his form in the past, has been able to stack up at graded stakes races in the past. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is a time he's going to have to show if he's good enough because, again, this is just such a loaded field. But it's probably the time where he's sitting on his peak effort and giving him a chance to show it.
Now, a horse that's going to be a huge price is a horse that's earned $1 million at Oaklawn Park in his career, the 1, Rated R Superstar. Now, this is a horse that also comes out of the Razorback in Essex and ran okay in the Razorback. Not great. There wasn't a great race in the Essex, but they're going to give the horse another shot here. It's only a 7-horse field. If for some reason maybe Stiletto Boy and Classic Causeway duke it out, maybe Rated R Superstar gets into the mix. He's popped with some huge races over this track in the past.
Absolutely. I mean, again, as we talked about, he's a solid racehorse. Some cases can be made that, he didn't get away well going back to the Razorback. And then even in the Essex stake, I thought it was a little interesting because they kept the horse closer to the pace than his normal run style. He's one of those that drops back and makes one late run. So they kept him a little bit closer to the pace. They might have been just looking to get a little bit more conditioning. They're likely to drop back, make one run in here. He's not quite shown he's been on kind of this graded stakes level, but I think he's another horse they're going to drop back. They're going to make that one late run. And you're going to see similar with number 5, Senior Buscador. He's coming out of that Sunland Stakes that he was just absolutely dominant that day. So another one that has some upside. Now, he's another horse that, as far as the distance, and this gets a little bit confusing because he looks like a horse that, the more distance, the better. But I don't quite know if that's necessarily the case. Maybe a little bit softer as far as class. But another one that is coming into this race that has some quality to him, going to make that late run.
Now, the one thing that I want to say here, Emily, looking at this race, my feeling is the line maker got it wrong. I think Rated R Superstar is a shorter price than Senior Buscador. I think Senior Buscador is going to go off as the longest price in this race. So
possibly, yeah.
Only for the fact that the folks at Oaklawn Park have seen Rated R Superstar time and again and again and again. And you're going to look at that compared to a horse that has never run over the track. And I think that horse will be a shorter price. But I think Emily and I are both saying, hey, if you can catch Proxy at a decent price here, that's probably going to be the route to go in the Oaklawn Handicap, don't you think?
Yeah. I mean, it's a competitive race, and as we mentioned, maybe a couple knocks on those shorter price horses that project to be shorter prices.
All right, the other race we're going to look to is the Elkhorn at Keeneland. It's a Grade 2. It's a 1.5 miles. I love 1.5 mile races. I don't think there's enough of them. I think it's a very good rider's race. I love the fact that you see a field of 10 in here. You look up and down the board. Value Engineering is a horse that sits at 7 to 2 in the morning line. Red Knight is a horse that sits at 5 to 2 in the morning line. And again, I think these two are going to be flip-flopped. I think Value Engineering is actually going to go off as the favorite in here for Mike Maker. What do you think?
Yeah, could be. Maker has both those horses, right? And this is what Maker does well with these type of marathon type horses. Certainly capable type runners, but I don't know. I feel like there's other ways to go.
Oh my gosh, there's so many other ways to go. I mean, we have a horse that we know in the Chicago circuit, the 4, another mystery. This horse, 2 starts at Keeneland, one of them a second place effort. They've made 10 starts going the 1.5 miles on their career. They've hit the board in 6 out of 10, only 1 victory. Chris Block, in Illinois, everybody knows Chris Block. You get outside of Illinois, and they know him, but he's maybe not given as much consideration as some other trainers here. Another mystery, you're probably going to get at least every bit of that 15 to 1, don't you think?
Yeah, and I think he's kind of a legitimate long shot in this race. Maybe the distance isn't quite the ideal, but another one, he's coming off a wide trip. Those Fairgrounds turf races were really tough to assess because of those rails out, as we kind of mentioned earlier on the show, looking at Gulfstream Park. It's a horse that he kind of stings because people talk about, like my my biggest bet that I've made in my career, my biggest losing bet I've ever made in my career was another mystery.
Oh, no.
Back at Arlington Park in the Grade 3 Arlington. I thought that horse was going to just absolutely crush second off the layoff. And I would make that bet a million times over. I thought that 9-1 was like the greatest price, and then all he did was come back and win the Black Tie of Fairness that second start. But as you mentioned, sorry to kind of digress.
You have to take a stance, though.
Just,
sometimes you
no,
have
again,
to do
like
it.
I said, it was absolutely the right bet. I have absolutely no regrets on that. It just didn't work out. But another time, he's coming into this race, second start of the form cycle, should likely to show maybe a little bit more tactical speed today. Loveberry's been aboard in the past, has kind of shown that with this horse. They like to be a little bit closer to the pace, and maybe that's the key over this course. We should mention they're expecting to get a little bit of weather tonight and early tomorrow morning, so I don't think that the course will be too much of a mess, but probably has a little bit of moisture.
Here's the thing about it, though. You talk about it, and you have to make this case. You talk about wagering strategy time and again and again. I have trip note after trip note on a ton of horses and that, and you wait for them to come back. And so often you wait and you hope you get that value, and so often you don't, because others very good, astute handicappers are going to catch on to that. There may be 2, 3, 4 opportunities in a year where everything just lines up for what you want to see, and that's where you really dive in. I mean, we play races, you play races, and you kind of dip your toe in a little bit or going a little deeper than that, but really that big bet, the one you wait for. So I can totally understand what you're saying with another mystery, and sometimes things don't work out, but that's the way that you have to play sometimes. So we'll see what we get out of another mystery. Now, how about Channel Maker? Let's touch on Channel Maker. This is the 9-year-old making career start number 51 as career. Everybody loves because it's the old war horse. I think 9-2 is probably too short. I think the horse is going to go off at a higher price. I tend to wonder if so much is just being played off this horse, at least in the line, just based on what he's done earlier on throughout his career.
I think so too, and you can make the case he certainly has plenty of races throughout his career that would fit. But where he is as a 10-year-old, I mean, anytime you want to feel old, just remember Channel Maker's still racing at the graded stakes level. But he's like the other Maker horses in this field, right. Red Knight. And are we experiencing a fire right now?
No, I think somebody might have like won on the slot machine or something. Now somebody's happy. I mean,
just as long as they don't have.
They weren't yelling that much though, so maybe they won a little bit.
But Red Knight and Value Engineering again, it's kind of like the same thing, right? They have the races that are going to fit. I thought Red Knight, when I was kind of initially handicapping, I thought would be a price. So the fact that he's the morning line favorite, that got me just less excited because I thought he was a horse that was capable, but I was like, oh, he might be in like the 6-1, 8-1 range, at least somewhere in there. And Channel Maker, again, could just be a horse in terms of value, but likely, as you mentioned, to get attention based on that name recognition.
All right, now looking there at the outside, the 8-horse, highest honors. Irad Ortiz rides this one for trainer Chad Brown. 4 starts at 1.5 miles, 3 third-place efforts, but the last couple of starts, not bad by any means. I guess my one concern for this horse is 9 starts over the last 2 years. You only have the 1 victory, but I do think this is a horse that is going to actually take a decent amount of action at the windows just based on connections, too.
Of course, yeah. And I mean, he hasn't had the best draw in those races, either been stuck wide or stuck at the rail almost throughout his career. And maybe even you could argue that the Belmont race back in July was his most competitive race, but he didn't have either of those and ran a solid speed figure that day. Another horse that, again, he's capable enough, but like you mentioned, because of the connections, is going to get attention just kind of based on the fact, especially with this morning line where people are going to see, Value Engineering is short, Red Knight is short, I don't want to mess with Channel Maker. 8 will just kind of look like, this is sort of the next best option in this field.
Let's talk about a monster. All right, the 6, Shawty. Okay, 2 races back at Gulfstream Park in the McKnight. Went the 1.5 miles. All right, Red Knight wins that race. Value Engineering finished the second. This horse is only a quarter of a length behind Value Engineering. Those are the 2 horses that they have as the first and second choice. Shorty is probably going to be 30, 40 to 1 in here. The horse wouldn't shock me by any means, at least to get into the mix.
Yeah, to get for sure. And you mentioned, just in terms of value, absolutely, to get into the mix. Now, I think they're stablemate to the outside. Yeah. House Street is a horse that has a ton of ability, has a ton of upside. This is going to be their greatest stakes debut, so there's a challenge. But again, you're getting a little bit of price compensation, but just off those visuals, looks like a stakes horse. He's just less exposed to the others. He's not like a 3-year-old going against older. He's a 4-year-old, so he has that foundation on his side. Showed a lot of ability, was absolutely dominant, winning back on March 5th. B+ effort. I mean, you can see one by open lengths, but the visuals are even stronger than that. With the wide trip, not easy to do. So I think this horse fits very well, and I think might not get attention because
Right.
they'll see, there's the rider change going on for
Yeah.
this race, and a Rod landing on
Yeah.
highest honors
Right.
instead. But I'm not bothered by that at all. Rod probably rides with Chad Brown a lot.
Exactly.
It's tough to know what goes into it, but it'll just play into your price. You're probably going to get a better on the 7 and the 8.
Right, and much of it is the business end of things, and compared to just that race alone, and you kind of have to follow where the business is. I want to mention the 3 Rising Empire here, because when you're assessing a racehorse, this is a horse that's definitely on the improve, but has never gone this far. It looks like the farthest the horse has gone is a mile and an eighth. You're asking a lot more now out of this horse to go a little bit further. Speed figure-wise, the last race was really good, and you look up and down this field here, because there isn't a whole lot of pace, I think this is a horse that tries to cruise along on the front end. How about you?
Yeah, it absolutely could be. I mean, this horse has just kind of found themselves in their right form getting on the turf. Now it's got to translate from the fairgrounds turf, which, as we mentioned, has been a little bit tough. Horses, it's hard to kind of assess that form. But again, I mean, none of those races did nothing wrong in any of those races going back to January.
Who did we miss here? We haven't. All right, let's talk about Tiz the Bomb, only because everybody wanted to talk about Tiz the Bomb going into the Derby last year, and that was off a win in the Jeff Ruby Stakes. Horse goes in the Derby, and actually wasn't a bad race. Finished 9th in the Derby. Since then, though, since that race in the Jeff Ruby Stakes, the horse hasn't won. It seems like they're kind of trying just a whole lot of different things with this horse. This is pretty much a big ask for Tiz the Bomb, don't you think?
It really is, and when we talk about like the morning line, I would say that it's probably fair odds what they put the horse at, but it'll probably be shorter because again, anytime you have those horses that have made the Derby, now going back to that time when he was on the Triple Crown Trail, and even before that, he actually started off on the turf, and he presents as a turf horse. So they've shifted him back to the turf this year. He's been running in those races, those 2 starts at the fairgrounds where the barn was a little bit cold. He was inside when there were times that didn't want to quite be on the inside at the fairgrounds, and then wheels back in just 15 days for this race, which is not something uncommon for McPeak.
Right.
Kind of races these horses into shape. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this horse run a big race. It's just, to me, like I just had a hard time trying to decide like what the public's going to do with him, because I could see them getting excited and betting this horse like closer to much shorter than that morning.
Right. You could see the horse at 16 or 18 to 1, and logically probably shouldn't be at 16 or 18 to 1, but you can definitely see. I mean, the horse did beat Rich Strike in the Jeff Ruby Stakes last year. So, I mean, Tiz the Bomb, everybody's still thinking about that. All right, so overall, just kind of for the ways we play this race, and I think you really have to watch the board in here. I think Value Engineering goes favored over Red Knight. If either of those are in anywhere around their morning line, there's so many other horses you could look a lot of other ways, don't you think?
Yeah. I'll be very interested in the 7 because I'm just, an improving type horse, especially if they're at the double digits. That seems very fair.
Yeah, and I'm going to look as well. I'll cheer for another mystery. I mean, just you cheer for the local connections. I don't know if I'm even going to play the race. I'll wait and see what we have value-wise. Rising Empire, like I said, intrigues me because of the lack of pace in the race. I think this is a horse that could go out there and cruise along. All right, that wraps things up for today for our edition of Club Hawthorne Live. But before we tune off, just a couple of things. Okay, the next couple of Thursdays, we're going to talk for our editions of Club Hawthorne Live before the pre-race show at Hawthorne. But for those that want to get to talk for a deep dive into the Derby, a couple weeks away, Wednesday night before the Derby, you're going to be out at one of our OTB locations. You're going to dive into the Oaks and most of the stakes, if not all, on Derby Day, right?
Well, we'll try. I mean, not trying to hold
That's
everybody.
It's a lot to talk about,
yeah. Absolutely. I don't want to try to hold people up overnight or anything, but at least that's the plan. Talk about the Oaks, talk about the Derby, and get into some of those stakes races. And then just from a handicapping standpoint, sort of to also create some evergreen content where people that attend have some tricks or some things to look for going forward, and just getting more excited about betting and playing horses.
And then for those that want to follow along on Derby Day, you and I are going to be talking all things Derby on Derby Day. I think we're actually right back out here at Crestwood. We might actually be out on the patio. So if it's nice out, we're going to chill outside and talk Derby. And we're not going to do the whole card because we're going to have to be like sleeping here and setting up a tent overnight to cover the whole card on Derby Day. We will cover the majority of the stakes, so leading into the Derby there. So if you want to check anything out, make any reservations, go to our website, hawthornebettingbars.com. You can find out the details for all of the locations, make calls there. Emily, there's always the other options if people want to bet online. The Club Hawthorne app, they can come, and the cool thing, they can bet the Derby the day ahead. They always have that option too.
Yeah, absolutely, and come to the track and do it, and all that stuff, especially with Oak. So yeah, it's a very exciting weekend. I'm trying to get my sleep in, and my meal
there is
prep,
no sleep.
and
Come on.
all my groceries, and my laundry, and everything.
I like that you talked about meal prep there too. Stay hydrated, get your meals, get enough sleep, and at this time of year, enough sleep is like 5 or 6 hours, if that.
Yeah.
So we'll see how things unfold. But thank you for tuning in to another edition of Club Hawthorne Live. Again, the next 2 weeks will be on Thursdays before races if you want to tune in. But hopefully you can join us for live racing as well at Hawthorne on Sundays and Thursdays. And again, Emily, the Wednesday before Derby will be out at one of our OTB locations. Check out the website for that. And we'll be here at Crestwood that Saturday of Derby Day. So Emily, another show of Club Hawthorne Live. I think another success.
I think so too. We got a couple favorites that we were able to get beat, and again, that's the key to this game.
Yep, try to make some money. Good luck to everybody with all of your selections, and we hope to see you when live racing kicks off at 2:30 p.m. on Sunday. Good luck.